Thank you so much for the opportunity, colleagues, to talk to you today. I think for us it is a big privilege to talk about academic advising for a couple of reasons. The first one is that it is about creating a very unique relationship between universities and students. And so many of our students have inspirational stories. Secondly, we are sharing with you our own data, but also national data around academic advising. And I don't think we should make it a competition, but the staff that do this work are just as inspiring, if not more, because many of our institutions we have found through the collaborative work that we've done are already doing things that are characterized as academic advising, but in many institutions they are just the person that students are sent to for help. There is no professional identity and no profession to which the work is linked, and we are tremendously grateful that this project can help give recognition to people in all the various institutions that care deeply about their students. So for us, it's all about creating a pathway to success, and we will link academic advising to student engagement and success. If you haven't received a hard copy of this report, I think I have about 8 left. That's the picture on the right. Just come and shake me down afterwards. Some will fall out somewhere. I'll talk a little bit about what academic advising is. Then I'll start with linking advising to student engagement and student success. And you'll see there's quite a lot of detail we go into, and Google will take over midway. And then we'll talk about widening academic advising. I think for us, the advising journey at the University of the Free State started I would say conceptually in 2008, 2009, because the student engagement work and the wonderful publications from George Koo and colleagues at Indiana State University flagged academic advising as a blossoming practice or a practice to watch. And of course, being a psychologist, I was interested and started reading about this. And in 2010, we started doing the first work. So it's been a longer journey for us than for many institutions. The privilege, however, has been to get feedback from students, and we're going to share student feedback at 2 intervals in this presentation. This is the first one. Can we play the video, please? So a quote to follow on from that. In terms of learning and personal development, what students bring to college is less important than what they do when they get there. Why should we embrace these colleagues and cherish them? Is because our advisors understand and get to know our students' backgrounds in a very unique way. They get to understand our students' aspirations and their talents. They also help to create meaningful interactions between the institution and the student, that there is such a thing as shared responsibility, and that there is somebody that cares. Advisors also help students to link various pathways which they come with, especially when they're in their first year, a personal and academic and a social pathway or goals that they set, and how to just bring those things together and link it to what you're going to study. Now, the quote at the bottom from George Koo calls them the Pizza Brothers, Pascarella and Terenzini, is that advising is a tag team activity that bolsters success. And I'll talk about this a little bit more when we go a bit deeper into the definition. So in advising, there's a range of topics which is discussed. Life goals in the form, I would like to become. We saw one of the students saying, I want to be a lawyer. thinking about their career goals and linking that very importantly to program selection and module and major selection. Some universities will have course there instead of module, and connecting this to how the institution provides teaching and learning. So how we view or try to visualize academic advising is that we view it as a hub. As a hub, that does not mean we see academic advising as the most important thing at the university, but we see it as absolutely critical to refer students to existing support. So academic advising is a catalyst and creates a multiplier effect so that students make use of what you already have on campus much better. I want to single out the counseling services a bit. So is this a group of people that now don't have the qualifications that are going to start doing therapy? Academic advising never positions itself that way. The reality, if you interact enough with your counseling colleagues on your campus, you will know that with the massification of higher education in our country, our counseling services are absolutely overrun with very, very serious problems. I'm not trying to minimize that what academic advisors deal with are not serious problems, because if you make a wrong subject choice and you have to redo your year, a whole village suffers the financial consequences. What I mean by serious problems is students that are on the verge of suicide, students that have manic depressive episodes, and that's what I mean by serious. And because our counseling services have relatively few staff for the number of students, academic advising choices get bumped down, understandably, into the waiting list. But they do have very real consequences. So academic advisors, and we work very well with our academic counseling service, help to streamline and alleviate the pressure on the counseling services. Now, if we look at linking advising, engagement, and student success, I think it's important that throughout your higher education pathway, you receive academic advising. Since it helps to introduce you to the culture of that institution and that it's a continuous process. Now, in this way, and especially for South Africa, we think academic advising qualifies as a high-impact practice. And I think there needs to be more debate on how we are going to define high-impact practices in South Africa. If you want to see whether this actually statistically makes a difference to student success, you can look at the red line. I don't know whether it's brown with you, it's the top one. Those are students who participate in advising, and we see that there's a higher probability of them passing their modules, or 70% of their modules, than those who do not participate in advising. Right. If we look at the link to student engagement, there's no definite causal relationship. We can't say because you do academic advising you are more engaged, or because you are engaged you do academic advising. But that the two seem to have a positive effect on each other for us is a statistical fact. Students who participate in advising feel more supported in their institution, more aware of the certain skills they need to develop, including the skills beyond the classroom. They participate more in high-impact practices and have much better relationships with staff and students. Here's the data. Students from both the national sample of the SASSI as well as UFS that have participated in academic advising have significantly higher levels on these different things. Now it's a bit small, so I'll read them for you, starting on your left. Is that left? Yes. Higher order learning, reflective and integrative learning, that those students that have engaged in advising are the red bar. Quantitative reasoning, make more use of learning strategies, collaborative learning, discussions with diverse others. You look at that student-staff interaction, the one that is a very short blue one, it's almost 11%, almost a 10% difference. Effective teaching and practices, quality of interaction. This would be with administrative staff, academic staff, as well as other students, and making use of the supportive environment. I will now hand you over to Google.
Thank you. I'm going to segue us into what Francois started speaking about, which is starting to see academic advising as a high-impact practice. And most certainly for us at the University of the Free State, we've started looking at academic advising and defining it as a high-impact practice. And we've borrowed from the work of Koo, where he started looking at certain characteristics that define high-impact practice interventions. And just to take two of them from the list is they demand interaction between staff and students as well as between peers over time. And an example of what the University of the Free State have done is they've defined different tiers of academic advisors, and we've brought in the tutors, the mentors, and we've built them into a layer that helps the student interact with them. And then participate in HIPs that provide students with different perspective on how and where learning takes place. And that is through embedding it into the tutorial program. We have a hybrid tutorial program, so we're able to embed certain strategies within that. And within the mentoring program, most certainly with the strategies that the mentors work with, we've embedded some advising work. And we've heard from the students that it can be a life-changing experience for students, and when something does become a life-changing experience, it can be regarded as a high-impact practice. And we've seen from the graph that Francois shared earlier that it is making a significant difference, and it is creating a change and enhancing the life of the student and propelling them to student success. Now, looking at the data that we investigated from the student engagement survey, I'm going to talk to a few of the data points. For us, we look at the data, and then that informs our practice. So, in terms of first year and senior participation in academic advising, the one sample, which is to your left, is the national sample, which excludes the University of the Free State, and to your right then would be the University of the Free State. And in both samples, we see that fewer first years are participating in academic advising than senior undergraduate students. And this, for me, starts to create a challenge for us, where we need to start thinking about a cultural shift. And we've been speaking about it through this conference. And we need to look at how we are going to embed and make advising more intentional from the first year. Because when we see seniors participating more, it's because they've started seeing advising as an emergency service. And for us as institutions, as advisors, as counselors, as student support coaches, we need to start embedding it as early as possible and making it an experience that carries the student right through to graduation. Now, having looked at some data asking, does having an intentional focus on advising make a difference? The blue is the national sample, and on the red is the University of the Free State sample. As Francois alluded earlier, we've been working on academic advising work since 2010 intentionally, and every year we've started to adapt our practices. Now you see that the students that plan to do or have done or are in progress of doing advising at the University of the Free State have a 45%, where it compared to the national sample that's sitting at 33%. So again, you see that once you foster and build that culture, you start being more intentional in building that culture, there's a higher probability of students participating in advising, consulting with an advisor, and most certainly it making a difference. And this is that same sample that we've been speaking about right through. Then in terms of advising and other high-impact practices, looking at the students that have participated in advising and those who have not participated or do not plan to participate in advising, we look at a range of high-impact practices which are defined in the student engagement survey. We see that in terms of percentage of students, we see that working with others, the students that have participated in academic advising, they're sitting at 88% because they start interacting and linking to resources across campus. and also making use of peer learning support because they're finding value in certain practices. And most certainly, we also see at 53% the first year experience, which is a growing culture within the South African context. And others that are similarly high is explaining material as a tutor, and also practical work and leadership and student societies, which we heard one of our SRC members yesterday from the University of Pretoria talking about what that has done for them. In terms of perceived gains, this may not be as clear, but we heard in the video earlier on that where one of the students alluded to that advising provides clarity, and for them clarity is power. And we see in this that the top 4 rated common gains, as perceived by both the national and UFS samples, are around thinking critically and analytically, using computing and information technology, working effectively with others, and writing clearly and effectively. So we see that for the students that participate in academic advising, some of the gains that they have perceived from this are critical thinking, analytical thinking, working with effective others, and that is because advising starts helping you navigate the institution as you move. In terms of student voices at the University of the Free State, we annually have a registration survey that reflects on the students' advising experience. And we ask them a range of questions, from where did you receive advising to what did you have? What was the conversation around the academic advising meeting that you had with your advisor? What did they help you with? Where did they refer you to? And one of the questions we asked there is, what did you value about the experience? And these are for students in responses in terms of what they valued most. The first student says they valued that the advisors actually cared about you personally and your well-being, and not only you just being another number studying at the University of the Free State who pays tuition fees. So they valued that someone was out there looking out for me, and they actually cared because they had the time, they asked the right questions, and they directed me in the right direction. The second student alludes to the advisor was friendly, warm, and approachable. I valued their true interest in me as a human most. That's the human touch. Student 3 says, I valued the fact that the academic advisors were knowledgeable about all the departments within the faculty, and therefore they could adequately answer all my questions and give me direction where needed. I further valued the fact that the advisors were patient and kind, even though they may have encountered difficult students. Lastly, I appreciated their willingness to assist me to the best of their ability, and going the extra mile to assist me with my queries that I may have had. So again, we see the common thread being the human touch, the student feeling cared for from when they enter the institution. And the fourth student says, the honesty and the sincere attention I was given. Many of our students, we have to break the news. You don't qualify for a mainstream program. You have to move into a different program. You have mathematical literacy. You cannot do accounting. So this student really most certainly appreciated the honesty and sincere attention I was given. I also value how much knowledge the advisors had and how they wanted to assist me in having the same knowledge. So again, providing that clarity for that student. In terms of the quality of academic advising over time, which was also highlighted in the keynote presentation this morning, so Kwan showed us the design value chain, where he alludes to the quality of service experience driving student engagement and commitment, and in effect also furthering propelling student success. And this for us is a testimony of that. We've seen that since 2013, when we ask students around the quality of advising, we've seen that the intentional monitoring of academic advising practices, there's been evidence that there has been improvement in the quality of advising. So you'll notice that the green bar is where they say the advising quality has been good, and that has stayed more or less fairly constant. But you see from the purple line, I hope it looks purple, yes, the purple line, which is where the students rate the advising services as excellent, we've seen that there's been a gradual increase since 2013, and in 2017, they were sitting at just over 40%, just over 40% indicating that the service is excellent. So you can see that with the intentional focus, students start appreciating the services that you provide. I'll talk to a few examples of what we've done at the University of the Free State and where we are going in terms of widening advising platforms. The first two, the tables, first illustrate what we have done in terms of both face-to-face, online, and group interventions with the students. You'll see that some of the interventions have fallen away, and that's because some of them didn't work and you have to adapt your strategies. But what we've continuously tried is that in every quarter of the academic year, we are supporting students with what they are needing at that specific time of the year. So one of the initiatives is Wide in Navigating Graduation Success. That is traditionally a second semester initiative where we have pop-up interventions all around campus, and students can consult with an advisor to check their credits, to check their standing. Are you making your way towards graduation? And what do you still need? There's an opportunity to register and deregister, and we run this initiative concurrent with the registration period. We also have in residence live presentations, workshops, one-on-ones where students can come and sit with us. And you'll see in 2017 there's the addition of a Star of Stars UFS marketing collaboration. That is an initiative driven by a marketing department where they select students from quintile 1 and 2 schools, from the rural Free State, top achievers, and those students then are appointed a constant advisor that mentors them, works with them, supports them through all their needs. So they have one workshop every quarter and they have one-on-one appointments throughout the year just to help them keep on track. And other examples of best practice, an example is what the University of Pretoria spoke about yesterday, and that is nudging, and that's bringing in the integration of student tracking, caseload management, sending out those SMSs, sending out those emails, just to keep the student on track. And sometimes it shouldn't be a "you need to." It should be an encouraging message that just encourages and reminds the student to what they do. So what we have at the University of the Free State is 2 platforms. Well, these are one of many other strategies we have. The first one is our Blackboard page, where we have, that is our learning management system, where we have a Blackboard organization where all undergraduate students are enrolled into, and they can navigate the Blackboard page as and when they need. So this is, again, making the resources available and students being able to navigate. So under that, we provide the calendar, the academic calendar. We connect them to campus resources. We connect them to careers where they can look up their major versus a career. We have online discussion boards where they in themselves have discussions and support each other. So whether it's a conversation about where do I find the printing room, where do I find the computer lab, how much is it to print, they are constantly engaging with each other. And what we do as advisors, we just monitor the conversations that take place. And then we connect them to all different types of advisors that are in campus. And in terms of advisors that are available on campus, I'll explain that just in a bit. We've also moved to Facebook, where we are constantly connecting with our students. The Facebook page is linked to our official institutional Facebook page, so all the information provided there also routes to our Facebook page, and you'll see that little orange block on the Facebook screenshot. That is always updated in every quarter and gives students tips on what they should be focusing on in that specific quarter. So the screenshot illustrates quarter 2, where a student needs to understand applicable rules and regulations because they're moving into tests and exams, and we constantly post links and posters that just provide information linked to these points. And then they need to track their personal, academic, and career goals. They're preparing for exams. They're checking their finances, so checking your NSFAS, checking your bursary, what are the requirements of your bursa, and all the others. And most importantly, for those students that want to apply for selection programs for the following year, we provide the closing dates for those. So students can constantly keep up on their mobiles, cell phones, with all the information we provide. Other platforms that we have are the Student Success Portal. I don't know how many of you are aware of the Student Success Portal. It is an OER, and it is open for colleagues at other institutions to just make use of. Again, you can just speak to Professor Stradom and he will give you details on how you get access on that. The Success Portal is an online library where students can work through it individually. So it's got a range of videos, it's got little study guides that they can download and activities that they can do to enhance certain skills. So that is embedding skills and providing the skills for the student as and when they need. Because one thing we've realized is that the workshop strategies no longer work. You have the workshop and it doesn't address what the student needs at that time. So we've made use of the LMS system to provide online services for the students. The other resource is the COFSI Advice. The COFSI Advice is our latest baby, and it is released every quarter and provides students interactive space where they can download and personalize the magazine. I'm going to try and hyperlink to give you a walkthrough through the latest edition of the COFSI Advice, but if it doesn't, I'll just share it with you. Oh no, it's not opening, unless I have to drag it. Which way?
Finish up first and then you get technical.
Okay, we'll get technical support just now. But anyway, the COFSI Advice is a range of short articles, concise articles, providing you with the skills that you need at that time. So what is a constant feature is students having a template where they can indicate their credits and help them calculate and understand their credits. So what a notional hour means, because many a times we put notional hours in our study material and students don't know what that means. And a credit, they're only familiar with that when they have to graduate. So we embed that into the COFSI Advice so that students can constantly engage with that material. So that, as you heard from Professor Peterson, came from the fees must fall when students couldn't have access on campus, and that has continued. So it was first seen as a rescue strategy, and since we've seen students making use of it and really appreciating it, because now I can personalize it and makes more meaning for me, and it's online. I literally just go online once, download it, and I can use it anywhere. And this latest version, we've actually designed it landscape so that it fits on your cell phone. So we've also started adapting it to tools that students constantly use. So in terms of where we're moving to as the University of the Free State, we've started mapping out our student life cycle. And our student life cycle actually has 5 phases. So we have the recruitment and marketing, we have our entry and admission, we've got our registration, our success progression, and our completion. And this is what we've started mapping out. We started mapping these processes out against the type of advising that takes place at that phase for the students. So for instance, during recruitment and marketing, it's more prescriptive and career orientated. So providing the information, so ensuring that our marketing division is able to deliver prescriptive advising, where they can provide the information that is linked to careers and the student starts engaging with the advising experience as early as possible. Then when they move into entry and admission, it becomes more developmental and integrating the career elements. So bringing the two together, and the lead for that we've identified is the student admission services as the leads. And again, within registration, developmental, instilling now that culture and reinforcing that culture, because during registration, they're also going through orientation or transition. So we've seen that that is a collaborative space where student admission services, faculties, the Center for Teaching and Learning can start working together in helping that type of advising to take place. During success and progression, we've identified that there's various stakeholders, which we call the advising network, that work towards collaborating in efforts that promote student success and progression, and that type of advising becomes then more proactive, developmental, intrusive, if some colleagues like to prefer to use that. But we also need to constantly carry with us the work done by career services. And then as they move to completion and graduation, we see that then that becomes more career focused, and that is preparing them for the world of work. So that is where we're integrating and redesigning redesigning our advising at the University of the Free State so that it becomes a streamlined and it becomes a culture that is embedded, because we've seen evidence through the student engagement work that it is most certainly having an impact on student success. And we've seen that advising is thought to be most effective in terms of promoting student success when integrated into academic support services. And that is the words of Kramer and Associates. So what I mentioned earlier also is that we have different types of advisors. Now you're probably wondering why we would have different types of advisors. We have a decentralized model of advising at the University of the Free State. That's because there are various people around campus that do different types of advising. And we've started categorizing the advisors at the University of the Free State. So they remain in their primary offices, but we embed some of the advising principles into their work. This is part of us professionalizing academic advising at the University of the Free State. So the first type of advisor, which is a category 1 advisor, we term all our peers. So all our mentors, tutors, and their primary role is to refer students. So a student comes to you, asks a question, and you're able to refer them. So those are all the student leaders, SRCs, P3 mentors, A-step tutors. Those are all our category 1 advisors. Our category 2 advisors then become all our support services, which becomes our student support services. So that becomes our right side consultants, our student affairs colleagues, our student counseling and development colleagues, and that is because they have a primary role to serve, but then they have the ability to refer students on. Then a category 3 advisor becomes our student admin services or student services, service center colleagues, or also known as student records officers. And that's because they deal with a range of the curriculum, but also need to be aware of the support needs of the students and have the ability to refer students. Then a category 4 would be then the faculties, where they are custodians of the curriculum. So they do purely curriculum advice and ensure that the student stays on track. So in some institutions, that would be known as a faculty student advisor, because they're sitting in the faculty and providing certain type of advice. But in our instance, they are providing purely just curriculum advice. And our category 5 advisors are then the advisors within the Center for Teaching and Learning, and they are more focused on overall student success, student development, and also embedding that and aligning that with the rules and regulations of the institution, and referring the student back if there are any deviations to their curriculum. So in terms of student tracking, we're looking at it being housed within the Center for Teaching and Learning, but having the accessibility to an advisor for, which is the faculty, because those are the 2 most common points where a student engages with academic advising. And that is us. Thank you.